This is Story Recapped. Today I'm going to explain an action sci-fi thriller film called Seobok. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Inside a ship on South Korean waters, doctors at the Seoin Research Institute inject a young man with drugs and perform routine tests on him. One night, one of the doctors, Carl Anderson, is assassinated by a flying drone equipped with an explosive. In the morning, Chief An of the Korean intelligence agency learns about the assassination, so he tells Dr. Shin Hak-seon that the project needs to be moved to a safer location because the chances of another attack are high. Somewhere in Seoul, Min Ki-Hyeon, a former intelligence agent, visits a clinic to pick up medicines for his migraine. The doctor scolds him for showing up unannounced, but Ki-Hyeon notes that he's been unable to sleep for 2 days because of his headache. Later, Ki-Hyeon parks his car by the seaside and inhales the medication for his migraine. As he starts feeling euphoric, his car rapidly sinks underwater and he finds himself in the middle of the ocean. Ki-Hyeon wakes up back in his car that night when an agent knocks on the window. He starts the vehicle to escape, but another agent threatens to shoot him. The men take Ki-Hyeon to An, who informs him that the agency needs him for the job. Ki-Hyeon reminds him that he's no longer with the agency, so An explains that he needs someone he can trust. He asks An what he would need to do, but the chief only tells him that it's a classified project. The next day, Shin takes Ki-Hyeon on a tour in their research lab and informs him that they recently raised their security level because it might be targeted in an attack. Later, Shin introduces him to Dr. Lim Se-yeon, who immediately briefs him about their research. Lim discloses that they have successfully cloned a human being with genetically modified stem cells, and they were able to grow the subject at twice the speed of a regular human. The doctors proceed to show him the clone, who sits inside an artificial environment with a screen displaying a view of the beach. Shin notes that the clone can be considered a new species because he has special genes not present in humans. He then discloses that the clone is named Seobok, after a servant who Emperor Qin ordered to search for the elixir of immortality 2,500 years ago. Shin reveals that Seobok does not die and his bone marrow produces proteins that can cure any disease. Ki-Hyeon refuses to believe him, so the doctors ask Seobok to demonstrate his ability, which is a side effect of cloning. Seobok telekinetically manipulates the pebbles and the leaves to fly around him. Ki-Hyeon suddenly hallucinates and passes out during the demonstration. When he wakes up, Shin deduces that his episode is caused by a brain tumor. He informs Ki-Hyeon that he might only have a year to live at most, so he offers to treat his illness with Seobok's bone marrow. That night, An tells Ki-Hyeon that the people responsible for killing Anderson view the clone as a powerful weapon, so they have to move him to a secret bunker. He discloses that he picked Ki-Hyeon for the job because he's not a security liability. Ki-Hyeon agrees to escort Seobok to the bunker and be part of the clinical trial to cure his illness. Before transferring Seobok, the doctors inject him with a solution to inhibit his cell division. Lim tells Ki-Hyeon that Seobok needs an inhibitor every 24 hours because he can die if the cell division spirals out of control. Soon, Seobok and Ki-Hyeon head to the bunker in a truck escorted by 2 vans. Ki-Hyeon introduces himself to Seobok and tells him that they'll spend a lot of time together. Suddenly, the truck slows down as an ambulance passes them by. The driver informs Ki-Hyeon that they're taking a detour because there's an accident up ahead. Meanwhile, An contacts their escort and instructs them to hand over Seobok and Ki-Hyeon to the Americans when they arrive at their destination. Before the agents can end the call, men inside the ambulance open the door and fire at the escort van. The truck rams into the van and winds up on the other side of the road. A shootout ensues between the agents and the operatives from the ambulance. As more operatives arrive, the doctors looking for Seobok decide to abandon the truck. Ki-Hyeon shoots an operative approaching the truck, but he passes out when another operative throws a canister of incapacitating gas into the truck. Soon after Ki-Hyeon regains consciousness, an American operative enters the truck and attempts to inject Seobok with an inhibitor, but the clone stops him with his telekinetic ability and slams him against the wall. The operative tries to get up, but Ki-Hyeon grabs him and kills him with a chokehold. As a guard approaches the truck, Ki-Hyeon starts the vehicle and attempts to drive out of the compound. A guard hangs onto the door, but Ki-Hyeon manages to knock him off the vehicle. They soon get on the road after ramming the truck through a wall. During a stop, Ki-Hyeon contacts An to inform him where they are. An then gives Ki-Hyeon the location of the nearest safe house and instructs him to wait for backup there. After the call, Ki-Hyeon finds out that the truck broke down, so he tells Seobok that they'll have to walk. Seobok asks Ki-Hyeon why he is protecting him, so Ki-Hyeon confesses that his life depends on keeping him safe. On the way to the safe house, Seobok gets curious about the shops on the streets, so he asks Ki-Hyeon to allow him to look around. Ki-Hyeon refuses, but Seobok disappears from his sight after he turns his attention away due to his migraine. Later, Ki-Hyeon finds the clone observing eels inside a shop. Ki-Hyeon realizes that he looks conspicuous because of his jacket, so he buys him new clothes and shoes. Upon reaching the safe house, Ki-Hyeon grabs a firearm and waits for backup to arrive. When Seobok gets hungry, Ki-Hyeon feeds him a bowl of ramen, but Seobok ends up eating 3 more bowls. Seobok reveals that he has never eaten ramen before because he only eats a special supplement at the lab. Ki-Hyeon asks what he does at the lab all day, so Seobok explains that he only eats and gets tested most of the time. The backup agents soon arrive, so Ki-Hyeon prepares to leave with them. However, an agent aims a gun at Seobok and tells Ki-Hyeon that they have orders to kill him. Ki-Hyeon stands between them to protect Seobok, so the agents threaten to kill him as well. When the agent fires, Seobok uses his ability to block the bullets. After the agent stops shooting, Ki-Hyeon stabs his hand with a fork and proceeds to attack his colleague. The agent attempts to shoot Seobok again, but the clone releases a shockwave that knocks him out. An calls the agents to see if they accomplished the job, but Ki-Hyeon answers and demands an explanation. An orders him to kill Seobok, claiming that it's for the good of the country, but Ki-Hyeon surmises that it's just for his personal gain. When Ki-Hyeon contacts Shin, the doctor instructs him to return Seobok to the lab because they can no longer trust the agency. Ki-Hyeon breaks the tracker on the agent's car to drive it to the lab, but Seobok refuses to go with him because he wants to go to Ulsan. Ki-Hyeon reluctantly agrees to drive him there since he's determined not to return to the lab. During the drive, Ki-Hyeon reminds him that he needs to be injected with an inhibitor, but Seobok doesn't seem to be concerned. When Seobok asks why he didn't step aside when the agent shot them, Ki-Hyeon points out that he would die too if Seobok gets killed. Ki-Hyeon gets concerned when Seobok suddenly vomits blood, but the clone insists that he's fine. Meanwhile, Sewon chairman Kim Cheon-woo contacts An to ask him why he's trying to kill Seobok. An feigns ignorance at first, but he eventually confesses that the Americans told him to do it because they fear that the world will become unstable when people don't die. An American official warned that immortality would lead to continuous conflicts because of unsatisfied desires. Kim Walker then told him that they would eradicate everyone involved in the experiment if An couldn't hand over the clone, and An might also be included in their list of targets. Cheon-woo warns him that the Americans can't be trusted and they might want the clone for themselves. Cheon-woo vows never to surrender Seobok, so An reminds him that he's powerless because he's going against the government. When Ki-Hyeon stops at the gas station to fill up the tank, he contacts Shin to inform him that Seobok vomited blood. Shin warns him that Seobok's brainwaves will become unstable because he's been off the inhibitor for 2 days. At that same moment, Seobok enters a convenience store and stares at 2 women eating their meal. Before long, the women's male companions arrive and confront him. When he walks away, one of the men grabs his shoulder, so Seobok slams him against the shelf. When the other man punches him in the face, Seobok uses his powers to twist his arm. As Ki-Hyeon looks for Seobok outside, he hears a powerful blast that breaks the store's windows. On the road, Ki-Hyeon scolds Seobok for causing a disturbance and almost killing a man. He threatens to leave Seobok if he keeps doing as he pleases, so Seobok apologizes. When they stop by the seaside to rest, Ki-Hyeon inadvertently discloses that he's taking Seobok back to the lab. He explains that he has to take him back for his injections, but Seobok argues that he's only concerned for him because he can save his life. Seobok expresses his doubt that he's worthy of saving, so Ki-Hyeon admits that he doesn't deserve to live, but he still wants to do everything he can to survive. Suddenly, Ki-Hyeon drops to the ground and passes out due to an intense headache. While waiting for Ki-Hyeon to wake up, Seobok sits by the shore and reminisces about the moment he asked Lim what it's like to die. Lim, whom he considers his mother, explained that it's like falling into sleep forever. When Lim was trying to feed Seobok with supplements one day, he suddenly got exasperated and slapped her hand away. Lim urged him to eat to stay healthy, but Seobok deduced that she only wanted him to be fit so she could continue running her experiments. When Seobok asserted that Lim only made him because of someone named Kyung-yoon, she got upset and slapped him. Soon, Ki-Hyeon wakes up and sees Seobok sitting by the shore. He asks him if he has already slept, but Seobok discloses that he doesn't sleep because he doesn't know how. Seobok asks Ki-Hyeon what it feels like to be dying, so he points out that it feels terrible. Ki-Hyeon explains that he's confused because he doesn't know whether he wants to keep living or he's just afraid to die. He notes that he regrets how he lived because he's a coward. When Ki-Hyeon was still with the agency, his colleague, Hyun-soo, asked him to be a whistleblower to let the public know about the corruption in their ranks. However, Ki-Hyeon had chosen to drug her and collude with An to silence her. Ki-Hyeon could only watch when An's agents pushed Hyun-soo's car to the river while she was still inside. Seobok tries to comfort Ki-Hyeon as he cries for Hyun-soo. After a moment, he gathers stones by the shore with his powers and piles them on top of each other. Seobok then begs him to take him to the Im-Hyun church in Ulsan. When they get to the church, Seobok heads straight to the mausoleum. He opens the niche of a boy named Kyun-yoon and tells Ki-Hyeon that the boy was the reason he was created. He notes that his mom got depressed when her husband and the boy died in a car accident, so she cloned him. Seobok asks Ki-Hyeon why people are afraid of dying if it's just like falling asleep. Ki-Hyeon explains that people are not afraid to sleep because they know they'll wake up the next day. Seobok notes that thinking of death scares him, but he's also afraid of living forever. Seobok starts weeping because he doesn't know what to believe to get rid of his fears. After leaving the church, Seobok asks Ki-Hyeon to take him back to the lab because he has nowhere else to go. He expresses his intention to save Ki-Hyeon's life, noting that he was born for that purpose. Seobok suddenly starts vomiting blood again, so Ki-Hyeon hurriedly drives to the lab. The police soon chase after them when Ki-Hyeon ignores the traffic lights and the speed limit. After barely evading the cops, Ki-Hyeon reaches the port where Seo-in's ship is docked, but he also discovers that An's agents are already there. He eventually stops the car after the tires get punctured by the spikes on the road. As the agents prepare to shoot them, a drone flies towards the agents and explodes. Mercenaries soon arrive to take Seobok and Ki-Hyeon to the lab. An operative knocks Ki-Hyeon with a stun gun before bringing them in. An contacts Cheon-woo to warn him that they have no choice but to launch an assault. Cheon-woo, however, remains defiant because he has hired mercenaries to defend the lab. An deduces that Cheon-woo paid mercenaries to kill Anderson when the chairman discovered that Anderson had been spying on Seo-in. When a battalion of SWAT units arrive at the port, Cheon-woo threatens to leak a video of Seobok to the press. He tells An that he's not trying to save humanity. He only wants the power to pick who lives and who dies. Ki-Hyeon soon wakes up and discovers that the doctors are already starting the procedure to extract Seobok's bone marrow. Shin tells him that they'll extract 40 milliliters from him each day until they collect a full liter. Ki-Hyeon is appalled that Seobok will have to endure it for a month, but Shin notes that they intend to do it to him forever because he doesn't die. Ki-Hyeon points out that the procedure is cruel, but Shin argues that Seobok isn't human. Ki-Hyeon asks Shin to stop the procedure, but he resists, so Ki-Hyeon hits him in the face. A guard suddenly grabs him, but Ki-Hyeon knocks him down and grabs his weapon. Cheon-woo and more guards arrive as Ki-Hyeon shoots the equipment in the lab. He compels Shin to discontinue the extraction, but Shin claims that no one can stop it. When Ki-Hyeon asks him about Lim's whereabouts, Shin shows him Lim's corpse and discloses that the guard shot her when she attempted to kill Cheon-woo. When Shin runs towards the guards, Ki-Hyeon tries to shoot Cheon-woo, but he misses. The guards start beating him, but Cheon-woo tells him to stop because he's the test subject. Seobok soon wakes up and sees Lim's corpse. Shin tries to inject him with an inhibitor, but Seobok stops him and repeatedly slams his body to the floor. The guards start firing at Seobok as he walks towards them, but he bounces the bullets away from him. Seobok then crushes a steel platform and slams it against the guards. Afterward, he crushes Cheon-woo in his wheelchair. In his anger, Seobok releases a burst of energy that knocks out Ki-Hyeon and the guards escorting him. The ship's entrance suddenly opens, so the SWAT team prepares to shoot. The SWAT units start firing when Seobok tears a hole in the wall and walks towards them, but none of their bullets hit him. After hitting An and the SWAT team with a shockwave, Seobok suddenly drops to his knees and starts vomiting blood. When Ki-Hyeon wakes up, he gets into an armored van and tries to drive it out of the ship, but it's being held back by chains. An shoots Seobok with a mounted gun on the APV. Although he doesn't sustain any injuries, Seobok is knocked back by the force of the weapon. Soon, the chains on the armored van break, so Ki-Hyeon rams the vehicle against An's APV and drives towards Seobok to help him. Ki-Hyeon gets hit with shrapnel when An repeatedly shoots the armored van. Ki-Hyeon tells Seobok to run, but the clone reminds him that he has nowhere to go. Seobok then approaches the SWAT units and uses his power to blast a hole in the ground below. Crude oil flows out of broken pipes as the SWAT units attempt to get out of the hole. When Seobok attempts to ignite it with a burning van, Ki-Hyeon stops him, but Seobok shoves him away. Ki-Hyeon surmises that Seobok knew what would happen when he returned, so he asks him why he still decided to come back. Seobok discloses that he wanted to be meaningful to someone. He notes that the conflict will never end as long as he lives, so he asks Ki-Hyeon to put an end to it. Ki-Hyeon hesitates, but he eventually picks up a gun and shoots Seobok after the clone tells him that he can never run away from death. Ki-Hyeon kneels in front of Seobok and weeps as the clone falls into eternal sleep. Some time passes and Ki-Hyeon goes to the beach where Seobok arranged the stones by the shore. He picks up a rock and puts it on top of the pile before walking away.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. turn on notifications, and leave a like. It really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.